My name's Emma. I'm 22 years old and I just graduated from the University of Warwick. I did an international management degree at the business school, so that included 4 years, which meant that I also did a year abroad to Singapore and Australia. And in my 4th year, I managed to secure a role in the commercial grad scheme at Kerry Foods, which is within the FMCG sector. And more specifically within the food industry. So I'm actually starting my role on Monday, so it's only in a few days' time, and I'm starting off in marketing, but there'll be 3 rotations, which could be like sales or category as well. That's my current situation, I guess. Just graduated this summer, obviously did all the applications to apply for stuff. The second question that I've kind of been asked to cover today is like the highs and lows of the job search, which, by the way, there were many lows. Like, I remember me and Daniela talking about this, just saying like on LinkedIn when everyone posts like what their new grad role is, and then everyone likes it and there's so much praise and stuff, but from that you don't see like the real story behind it and like all the rejections along the way. So I think this is going to be quite a hefty answer, I guess, because I think it's really important to cover. So essentially, I started like applying properly for jobs when I was in Singapore, because I wanted to, like, after my year abroad in summer, get some like actual commercial experience before applying to grad jobs in my 4th year. I don't know, my experience was at the time like okay on my CV. It was like I'd always had a part-time job, like waitressing or whatever. I'd had like kind of exec positions at uni. So I had that kind of experience and some stuff from school. But apart from that, I didn't really have anything that like really stood out. So yeah, I guess I put quite a lot of pressure on myself in Singapore to like apply to summer internships whilst I was out there. I applied to loads. I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I applied to like all the consultancy ones like EY, and then I applied to like RBS, Unilever, P&G, Reckitt Benckiser, like literally everything. I just had this huge list of all like the good companies that I wanted to apply to. And I remember at the time, it was quite good, I guess, because I got in early, like the practice of doing all the online tests and just a feel for how long that process was. But I do remember just getting rejection emails all the time and it just being so like draining. Like, the only one that I really did make progress with that I remember, and I remember getting quite attached to it and really wanting it in the end, was at RBS. So it was marketing for them. I got to the video interview stage and I remember just being in this like non-airconned room in Singapore, like sweating in my like interview stuff. And yeah, the interview itself, like I was a bit awkward in it, I remember, because it was my first video interview, and like I think I just came across way too strongly, like I just wasn't relaxed or anything. And like in hindsight, now I've done way more video interviews, which I'll get on to. Like they literally just want someone very chilled who's just themselves. So yeah, that was quite a low, to be honest, because as I said, I put a lot of pressure on myself whilst I was away to apply for stuff, and I wasn't surrounded by other people that were doing applications as well. And because I was like on my own away from my family and getting all these rejections and just stressing about getting an internship in summer, that was quite difficult. But I think actually that put me in really good stead for final year, because I took rejection way less personally by the time I'd got round to doing the grad apps. So what ended up happening is I came away from Australia with nothing at the time back home. And I remember sitting in the garden with my dad and crying, like saying how I'm not going to get a grad scheme after uni, and like everyone's rejecting me, like I have no experience, what am I going to do? And my dad literally was like, Emma, you're going to be absolutely fine. It's a numbers game. Like you just have to apply to so many and like eventually you'll hit the target. And I was like, yeah, but I've applied to loads, like da, da, da. And he was like, yeah, but the fact you're getting through little stages at once, he was like, it just takes practice. And like, yeah, I just remember him like describing the analogy of like a target suddenly firing loads of arrows, and at one point one will hit the center of the target. So I always had that like analogy in the back of my mind, which kind of kept me motivated when applying. Anyway, so funnily enough, Daniela, the founder of Graduating, posted on Facebook during summer saying she worked at like Young Foodies, which is kind of a company that works within like young startup companies in the FMCG world, mostly based in London, and was like, oh, if anyone wants some experience, like there's a role going at the moment, just message me on Facebook. So I messaged Daniela and was like, absolutely, I want to know what this is about. Had a call with the guy called Ed, went in for an interview. He seemed very chill, and I was a bit taken aback at how successful the company was, but how like chilled out it was. Just went in for like a chat. It was quite an informal interview. And yeah, I got the role, and that makes it sound like it was just so easy. Like at the time, it was a godsend. Like I was so worried about not getting anything, and suddenly I'd landed that job. And it was like amazing commercial experience. Like I was doing field sales in London for a startup meat snacks company who is like it's doing insanely well at the moment. I managed like over 80 accounts in London, going around and like securing deals. Learnt all the marketing and like sales slang. It was a great time, and it made me realize like what I valued in a company. Like I wanted something exciting and fast paced. I wanted something with a lot of responsibility. Like I didn't really have many one-to-ones or anything like that. I just like made the role, like I made the most out of the role, if that makes sense. And that was what has got me to where I am today, I think, essentially. I also managed to secure some work experience at Unilever because I knew a friend that worked there. So that was quite lucky. But then again, I like pulled some strings myself to do that and like went out of my way to set that up. So in the end, I did actually end up going into fourth year with a bit more commercial experience on my CV. I remember like another big low in particular was getting through lots of stages at P&G. So I'd been to like an event at Warwick Uni, and I actually knew one of the girls who worked there because I used to play netball with her. So I felt like I had a contact already, so I had a bit of an in. And I also was really good at messaging like other employees on LinkedIn or graduates and like having a bit of a call with them before, just getting a bit of an inside knowledge. And yeah, they can't give that much away, but like it definitely gave me a lot more confidence going into stuff, knowing that I'd already had like a conversation with someone from the company. So yeah, I remember being in P&G. I'd felt quite comfortable because I'd spoken to a lot of people there. I had a video interview with a manager, which I thought went really, really well at the time. So I was like starting to really get attached to this company. I was like, this is going really well. And did the tests and like passed the tests, like had to do a lot of kind of like revisiting maths. Like that's not my strong point at all. So the numerical tests for me at the time was like so daunting. I literally had like a notepad out and like was practicing calculations, and like it was like I was at GCSE again, like writing out my notes really neatly. But yeah, so I remember getting invited down to London to like resit the test in person. And we got there, and I don't really know what happened, but like the main woman who like conducted the test just really didn't like me. I like, literally had done nothing. And I remember like putting up my hand to be like, oh, are you going to let us know if there's like when there's 5 minutes left for the test? And she was like really belittling and was like, can you wait until I've finished, reading the questions before you just jump in? And was really not very nice and made me feel really uncomfortable. So that didn't set me in the best framework for the test. In itself, I wasn't very tactical about how I answered the questions. Like I should have done the maths section last and my strongest sections first. I completely flopped the test, right? I like even had to go through guessing like the final page of all the like multiple choice boxes. And like even then I was so behind that I couldn't even fill in all the blanks. Like that is how badly this test went, right? And I was the only one, we were all in a room and I got called up. She was like, Emma Johnson. And I was the only one that failed this test. So like, not only had I travelled like, I don't know, 2.5, 3 hours to get there, to spend 40 minutes in the building or like an hour in the building, and then was sent home and I had to travel all the way home. And like the woman was so mean to me when she was like telling me that I'd failed. I already knew I had, but she was almost like smiling because she didn't like me. Like it was awful. So yeah, that was a really low experience. But then again, like I just rationalised it, like I don't want to work for a company like that if they have people like her there, and I don't know, I was just like, my worth's so much better than that, so I'm just gonna apply to other stuff. Like, I was upset at the time, and I like put in like a report about her because it was awful, and I just thought it was mishandled. But yeah, I didn't like let that get me down. As I said, by this point, I was quite used to the rejection. That doesn't mean it's not tiring, but I was a bit like, oh, I got through so many stages, like it's really annoying. But with time, I was like, that means I'm doing the right thing. But by the way, I did about 25 grad applications. I did so many. Like, luckily, me and my flat went absolutely mad, and we all notified each other when different ones were running, or we'd post in our chat like, guys, I've got this interview at this time, be quiet, and like write on our doors like in an interview, be quiet. It was quite funny. But yeah, so I applied to so many. So I got so many rejections. I literally remember writing this Excel spreadsheet and colour coding it, and like all of them were red because I just got rejected from them all. Like, it was awful. But I just kept going, and there are so many things you can sign up to, which I'll come on to. So there's like constantly loads coming through. Even if you don't get them before Christmas, there's a few like, and not even a few, there's loads after January as well that come up. So I remember like in November, I managed to get to the assessment centre stage of ABF, which again is like in the food industry, and it's FMCG firm. So they own like Patak's, curries, Twinings, brands like that. Yeah, basically that was a hard assessment centre. It was my first one. We had to do like a massive new product development under one of their current brands and do a massive presentation on it. We had like a week to do that before the assessment centre, and there were all the standard stages like group task, interview, what is it, a situational test, and then had to present my pre-prepared MPD launch thing. So that was good. I really enjoyed doing that though. Like, I loved the day, and I was just like really excited by it. Obviously, I was just really happy to be there. So I felt like coming away from it, I didn't think I got it, because once I got there, I realised that everyone had so much experience. Like, I was actually surprised at how good everyone was. Like, people had already worked at Unilever for a year, or like Mondelez or whatever. But I knew that when I came out, I'd done myself justice. So I was really happy with that. Funny enough, at that assessment centre, I stayed overnight in a hotel, and we, the night before, had dinner with the assessors. So one of the questions was like, have you had any interesting interview experience? And I think that goes underneath that question, because that felt really backwards, like having dinner with the people that are going to be assessing you the next day. Like, I just didn't really know how to react. But then again, I was just like, I'm just going to be myself, because people want to work with people that they like. And like, if you let all these formalities get in the way, then it just becomes a bit awkward, and you're like less comfortable and a lot more uptight and nervous. So I just tried to be as relaxed as I could. But yeah, so what happened at the ABF one is essentially I got a call. They were like, we have good and bad news. And I was like, okay, right. And they were saying, so the good news is you got in like the final 4, and there were like 12 of us. But we're only taking like 2 people. And I was like, oh, okay. So, but I was, at the time, I actually genuinely was still really happy about that, because as I said, I didn't think I'd got it. But I remember telling my dad, and he was like, how is that good news if you didn't get it? And I was like, well, I was really proud of myself that that was my first ever assessment centre. And like, it's really rare that you're going to get something first time. And to be honest, like, I think it was a bit of a godsend. Like, it set me up so well for the second one I went in for, because I knew exactly what to expect and what it would be like. And that was kind of annoying in a sense, because they said I was on the waiting list, and then I'd heard one of the girls who I made friends with on the day had actually decided to take another grad scheme. So I knew she dropped out, but they didn't contact me, even though I was on the waiting list. And I remember calling them like a few weeks later asking, where I stood, and even so I did it in the new year. And then they were saying, oh, there's no waiting list, the business partners aren't going to accept anyone else. So I was kind of like, why did you even tell me I was on the waiting list? That's just such a waste of energy. Anyway, got to Christmas, I was like, great, I still don't have a graduate scheme. By this point, I really didn't think I'd get one, but I was trying to just rationalise it. Like, there are so many jobs out there. Hardly anyone in the real world has a graduate scheme. I was like, it's just in the uni context that I'm in that everyone wants one. So I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'll just have a good summer, go travelling, and then I'll just apply for entry roles when I was home. And I think that changed attitude actually like really relaxed me. And then going into stuff, I just had no expectations of myself, and I was just so relaxed. And like, I remember, so for the video interview for the job that I currently have, at the time I was going through some really like difficult stuff at home, and I like even like postponed the interview by a week, and you know, they let me. So if that ever happens to anyone, don't think, oh, I'm just not going to apply. Like, you know, ring up HR and just explain your circumstance, and they usually are quite understanding. Because like, if I hadn't have postponed it, I wouldn't have this job now. Like, I could have just been like, oh no, I won't apply. So there are ways of getting around it if you can. But yeah, I remember doing the video interview and I was just like laughing on it, like really chill. Obviously there were like serious questions as well, but I was just like really smiling myself. And I really enjoyed it by the end. Like, by this point I'd done so many video interviews, it was just like became natural. Yeah, at first they're so daunting, but by the end I did actually really enjoy them, unless they threw in a really horrible question. But mostly by that point you know what you're talking about. And it takes a lot of practice, don't get me wrong. But the good thing is, because I applied to so many, it was draining, yeah, but like I saw each thing as a learning point. So I just took a learning experience from each thing rather than seeing it as, oh, another rejection. I just took something forward from it to make myself in a better position moving forward. And yeah, then got invited to assessment centre in January. Went to that again. It was an overnight stay. Luckily didn't have dinner with the assessors, but had dinner with like 3 other grads, which was really nice because like I felt way more comfortable to ask questions. And we got given this brief, like, and we had an hour to prepare it before we went to dinner, and then obviously no one could prepare it in an hour, so we were like all stayed up till like midnight. This was like an individual thing, but I'd spoken to other people and they said they also were up really late, and then had to prepare that for the next day, and it was like a sales brief. Again, all the same tasks on the day. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I remember literally after coming back, I wanted it so much, and I actually couldn't sleep for like days after. I was waking up like thinking about it in the middle of the night, like I was so stressed, and I did get it in the end. And honestly, I was so happy and so relieved, and I just thought, oh my God, all my hard work paid off. And that was obviously the biggest high of my job search. But I think the most important things is to take something from a low rather than just being really down about it. It's good to like, yeah, definitely learn from everything that you go through, and each thing is experience, and it's all going to help in the end, rather than it being a rejection and you seeing that as a confirmation that you're not good enough. That is just absolutely not the case at all. It's such a numbers game. But as I was saying, stuff that people can look at to know when job things come up is like obviously LinkedIn, Target Jobs I used quite a lot, and Milkground, Prospects, I've just got a list here, Adzuna, Debut, Grad Cracker. Sometimes like your uni department will post stuff on a certain page, or even if you know what kind of companies you want to apply for, if you know you want to go to the FMCG sector, for example, just like type in FMCG firms, look at what firms are on there, and then go on job specific websites and look on their job tabs for what's open. Have I had any interesting interview experience? That's the final question. And yeah, one was obviously the dinner with the assessors. And secondly, I had to do like a personality test before the ABF one. And I had an hour and a half interview, which actually ages. I remember asking at one point, like, how long do we have left? Because I literally felt like I was just being interrogated. But the last part of that interview was like asking me questions about my personality test, and I hadn't had the results of them. And it was basically, I think, to see if I knew how well I knew myself and my strengths and weaknesses. And I actually, luckily, did do quite well in that. But that was quite weird because I've never come across that. So yeah, maybe be prepared for that. But yeah, that is me. Obviously right now it's a bit surreal because I haven't started my role, and I guess I'm not really nervous, I'm more excited, but it's just that whole thing of like, I hope I'm good enough. But it will be fine, and like, you know, even if you're getting through these little loopholes or whatever, you're getting through them because, you know, something's standing out and you are good enough. As I said, take away something good from each experience, and in the end, you will find something, whether it's a grad role, whether it's an entry role, whether it's just work experience somewhere. As I said, I came in like having no experience and was panicking, and now I'm sat here like with a job. So it does happen, and we all have different time lengths and routes of getting there. But yeah, I'm happy to like look over people's CVs or literally message me with any questions, even like help with competency-based interviews. I have like loads of documents I can forward on to you guys. Also, like I have a really good like CV writing pack as well. So happy to help anyone if I can. So yeah, best of luck with everything. Sorry this has been insanely long, but I hope it helps. And yeah, thanks for having me. Good luck.